Saturday mornings brought a brief respite from academic pressures for Saint, but they were brimming with house chores. Despite the gloomy weather, Saint remained in high spirit as he fetched water from the nearby borehole station. Ensuring every water container at home was filled to the brim during the weekend was his responsibility. Living on Udo Street, one of Uyo's many areas without piped water access, the task was crucial. Opposite their humble 3-bedroom flat, Saint's mother ran a small buka, and the 4 one-room apartments attached to the building, providing additional income. This property was her only inheritance after her husband's passing. Through the buka and the property, she had managed to support Saint's education and meet their needs. As her son approached his final year, she looked forward to his graduation and the start of his independent life. Mrs. Ofyong delighted in her son's vibrant mood, longing for his lasting happiness. Aware of his past struggles, she believed that focusing on the positive could enhance his emotional well-being. Meanwhile, Saint's exuberance originated from his eager anticipation of Janet's visit. Confident in her reliability, he embraced the newfound joy she had brought into his life. Initially uncertain about inviting Janet to his modest home, Saint preferred the idea of taking her to a wealthier friend's apartment. He worried that their humble living conditions and impoverished neighborhood might affect their blossoming relationship. With his chores finished by midday, Saint intended to continue writing his story after bathing, easing his anticipation of Janet's visit. Janet arrived at Saint's house to find his mother attending to a customer outside. Noting the resemblance between mother and son, she marveled at Mrs. Ofyong's youthful beauty. Janet's attraction to Saint went beyond his good looks. His sense of humor and natural conversational style made their time together feel effortless and enjoyable. Janet politely greeted Saint's mother and requested to see him, following his instructions. Mrs. Ofyong, delighted to meet one of her son's friends, warmly welcomed Janet and asked a young girl to inform Saint of his visitor. As they conversed, Janet found talking to Saint's mother reminiscent of speaking with a female version of Saint himself. She sensed the underlying sadness in Mrs. Ofyong, who expressed concern about Saint's loneliness and unhappiness. Mrs. Ofyong revealed that Saint's twin sister had been kidnapped when they were 5 years old, profoundly impacting his emotional well-being. Surprised, yet empathetic, Janet struggled to find words in response to the revelation. She admired Mrs. Ofyong's strength in sharing such a personal story. Mrs. Ofyong explained how the loss of Saint's twin sister had left him with a profound sense of incompleteness. Janet felt a heightened responsibility to be there for Saint, understanding the depth of his emotional struggles. Mrs. Ofyong believed that Janet's presence had positively impacted her son and requested her continued support and care. Agreeing silently to Mrs. Ofyong's request, Janet committed to being there for Saint. Their conversation was interrupted by an uncouth customer, but coincidentally, Saint signaled for her from the entrance. Janet bid farewell to Mrs. Ofyong and eagerly entered the house, prepared to spend quality time with him. Janet entered Saint's simple yet tidy student room. A 10-inch mattress lay near the window, and opposite it was an artificial wardrobe with a few pairs of shoes. The room exuded a faint scent of books and ink, and the well-worn reading table showcased Saint's creativity and passion for writing alongside a modern CD deck. The scattered books and handwritten pages spoke of the inspiration flowing from his soul. Janet sat on the wooden chair, admiring the charm of Saint's cozy sanctuary, which felt like a haven for his thoughts and aspirations. Saint, visibly eager and relieved by her visit, asked about their conversation with his mother. Janet openly shared their discussion about his kidnapped sister, sensing a deeper emotion beneath his seemingly indifferent response. Delving into the topic, Saint explained repression in psychology, the mechanism of blocking traumatic childhood memories. The loss of his twin sister had impacted him, even though he couldn't remember the details. Janet admired his resilience in facing life despite the hidden scars. Their conversation flowed naturally, and Janet couldn't help but be drawn to the passion that Saint exuded when talking about his stories and writing. He confessed that storytelling had become an outlet for his emotions, a way to channel his energy into something positive. Feeling a connection like never before, Janet suggested typing his manuscript for him and sharing it online. The idea of having anonymous readers intrigued Saint, and he agreed. The excitement of this creative endeavor enveloped them, and in a moment of boldness, Saint leaned in for a tender kiss. The world seemed to fade away as they shared an intimate moment, their hearts fluttering with newfound affection. After the kiss, they discussed the logistics of the plan, and Janet assured him that she would take care of the details. The warmth of her support made Saint realize how lucky he was to have her in his life. With a mixture of excitement and relief, he pulled her close and embraced her tightly, feeling a sense of security and comfort he hadn't experienced in a long time. Janet held onto the embrace, feeling a newfound responsibility towards Saint. She promised herself that she would be there for him, to support and care for him as they embarked on this creative journey together. After an eventful day filled with intelligent discussions with Saint, Janet returned home feeling tired, but eager to begin typing his story into her laptop. His philosophical views about life and human behavior fascinated her, and she couldn't wait to see what the brilliant young man had crafted. Saint had shared that writing the story was a challenging venture for him, driven by an inexplicable urge to explore something new. He had started without overthinking, half-heartedly committed to seeing it through. Nonetheless, Janet believed it would be captivating and eagerly delved into the story as academic pressures were still manageable. Janet found the story as fascinating as she had anticipated. Saint's ability to describe and imagine was truly admirable. The golden medallion held more than just material value. It contained a troublesome evil spirit locked away by the gods for years. The Ibibio monastery's purpose was to safeguard this medallion, and its monks were individuals of exceptional purity in both spirit and heart. Saint emphasized that the medallion must not fall into the hands of the corrupt, as it could unleash the imprisoned malevolence. Thus, the monastery's presence remained a secret, and visitors underwent careful scrutiny by the monks. Chapter 1 concluded with the medallion being stolen from the monastery and taken to Abuja, where 3 thieves intended to sell it as a precious artifact. As Janet continued typing, exhaustion eventually caught up with her, prompting her to save the work and retire to bed. Her anticipation to continue the story the following morning followed her into her dreams, where she saw the tale turning Saint into a star. For 13 days, the monastery remained in utter silence, awaiting the chief monk's guidance on retrieving the medallion. But the expected explanation never came, leaving the monks to wait in uncertainty. On the 13th day, a meeting took place among 9 senior elders and the chief monk, and Odeon, a young and inexperienced 20-year-old monk, was unexpectedly summoned. To his astonishment, Odeon was chosen for a critical mission, to retrieve the medallion. Doubts and insecurities clouded his mind. How could he, a novice, be entrusted with such a task? Born within the monastery's walls, he had never set foot outside and knew nothing of the world beyond its boundaries. Nevertheless, he dared not question the chief monk's decree. The chief monk assured Odeon that during 3 days of fasting and isolation, the gods would guide him to the story-bearer, a young and spiritually endowed student writer. This writer was the god's backup plan, possessing the energy needed to lead Odeon to the medallion. Bewildered but with a newfound sense of purpose, Odeon began his preparation for the divine mission.